So a picture always paints 1,000 words, and I guess this is probably one of the best things to summarize the case study. So as I've said, you can see from when we let the contracts to when we intervened with the supplemental agreement, the compensation events that were being agreed versus the ones that were disputed was where our contractors were turning up at the boards every month and saying that these contracts are at large, we can't sustain this. How could they carry on predicting their cash flow? I don't know what the profit margins are there, but here they run between 4 and 7%. And when you're talking hundreds of millions of pounds of contract, that absolutely is not a sustainable position for anybody, and not for TfL either, because it's a public body. We didn't have a bottomless pit of money to pay for these things, so certainty was for sure really an important thing. So when we did the supplemental agreements, we used that risk money I spoke about right at the beginning, which was the market conditions risk, to try and sort out the compensation events. So the lead QS on the contractor side and client side, my side, had a job to go and close all of the history out. And that did take some time, and they all agonized over it. And when we got to signing the agreements, there was maybe, I think, 6 or 7 things from memory across the 3 contracts that we did take to cap. And I could argue that they probably were late or whatever, but my view, nothing's ever too late to do an intervention that gets you to a really good answer. And so those 7 things that we took, 6, 7 things, were really well considered things. The one I've spoken about was one of those. And all of them, it reached resolution. We could close them out. So then that gave us this clear line that you can see in this graphic of how we move forward. So when we move forward, having the conflict avoidance process meant that those 2 commercial people, contractors and client side, worked through all of those events. So the things we actually then had to take, which you can see is it was really just a handful of things, was a really considered thing that needed resolving, and the parties couldn't. So I think in summary of this, signing the pledge drove some really good behaviour with people, and it also gave them the confidence to resolve things at the time they impacted. And that did mean that we got some really good deliverables out of this. We had some closures. For those of you who know central London, we had a closure at Tottenham Court Road and Bond Street so Tottenham Court Road had to close, do its work, finish, to give Bond Street time to do their works and open before the shopping period in London. And it's the first job I've ever worked on of this magnitude where it actually came in 10 days early. And so there was a lot of things going on there. People were working collaboratively. All of the issues were being resolved, and we didn't actually get any compensation events out of those 2 issues. I think one other thing probably just worth saying on the bottom of this slide, the writing, we did some exercise with the ICE, which looked at tender prices versus closeout costs. And I must admit, when I did this, I had no benchmark of anybody else who had done something, measured that. So for us, we were 46% higher on these contracts, but the average in the UK was 79.8. And I do wholly put that down to introducing the cap halfway through the contracts in the supplemental agreements.